It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview the UConn head volleyball coach, Coach Ellen Herman-Kimball. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Brandon. How are you?
I'm doing good. Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to get involved in college coaching?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with my past experiences being a student athlete myself. Played at Ohio University and loved everything about my experience. I started volleyball at a young age, around 7th grade, and fell in love with it ever since. I think I have a natural niche of being a teacher. I love educating. I love having influence on people. And because I loved my experience and I loved what Ohio University had to offer me, it only seemed natural to get into the coaching world.
What was your college time like at Ohio University?
It was awesome. I had a really great support system. I loved my teammates. They were like my sisters and my family. The education had what I wanted to study, even though I knew back in my mind I wasn't going to use it because I knew I was going to get into coaching. And obviously the coaches and the support staff there was great, and it was close to home. So just far enough away from my parents where they couldn't show up every day, but close enough to where they could watch me play. And yeah, my experience was awesome. We won. We were really competitive. Back when I played at Ohio, we were a top 25 program. So we were competing with the top dogs in the nation, and really just love to be competitive and have a championship-like experience. And that's exactly what we did. So we loved it.
What was it like putting on that college jersey, and what were some of your accomplishments?
Putting on the jersey, it's quite, it's obviously a privilege. It's not something that is something to be taken for granted, especially kind of going through this experience of this year with COVID. You realize that at any moment, anything can be kind of taken away from you. But back then it was, I was fortunate enough to get a full ride scholarship and get my education paid for while playing the sport I loved. And I ended up being okay at it. Like I mentioned, as a team, we were a top 25 program. So we won conference titles. We won conference tournaments. We were able to participate in the NCAA tournament and go as far as the potential to go to the Sweet 16, which is something that's a pretty big accomplishment because not everybody has the opportunity to do so. So that was pretty awesome.
What was it like going from college to obviously playing professional volleyball?
It was a little different. I think with college, back when I played, college was where it was at. You had all the level of support. It was pretty much, you had to want to fail in order to fail. And then when you get to the professional life, it really was dependent upon you. Growing up, just how it is when you grow up in general and go into the real world, everything is dependent upon what you decide. You kind of pave your own way in your future. And I basically picked up my bags and moved overseas, and I lived overseas for almost 2 to 3 years. There's a lot of, adversity, language barriers, being away from your family and friends. Everything that's comfort to you is thousands of miles away. So in that realm, it was a little challenging to kind of get used to right away. But the fact of the matter is like I said, volleyball taking you everywhere around the world, meeting so many different people, obviously competing and winning and living a lifestyle over there. That is something that not everybody gets a chance to do. So playing pro, and the difference had its challenges, but it was a great experience. And I would do it all over again if I had the chance to.
Of course, coming off of your pro season, what was it like getting into college coaching?
With me, I think it was just changing hats. So, being a player is one thing and being a coach is another. You have these amazing athletes that are incredible. They have all the talent in the world to be the best of the best. But if you're not able to teach or not able to have the buy-in, not always great players are great coaches. And sometimes great coaches have never been players. So I think that was probably the biggest difference is like, okay, how can I articulate and do this in order for, my student athletes to pick up what I'm throwing down, basically. And also knowing that you can't do it anymore. Like you have to be the one that's teaching it rather than doing it. And I think that was probably my biggest struggle, was just switching hats, being a player and now being a coach. But those playing days are long gone now. So now it's fully committing to being a teacher and being a coach. So
What was it like to obviously get on the UConn staff in 2011 and then come back in 2018?
Yeah, my story is a little interesting. So all of my coaching experiences has been at the same university, which is slightly strange. Because obviously a lot of people bounce to different institutions or start one way, go another. So I had a little stint in between my pro days where I thought I was gonna get into coaching, and I ended up, my passion just wasn't there yet. I wasn't really ready to be a coach and hang out my shoes. And then I came back. I obviously came back later. I actually came back for a relationship, and I wasn't in coaching then. But they ended up hiring a new head coach, Chris Grunwald, who, he didn't know me and I didn't know him, but we all knew the same people. And I must have convinced him to hire me as an assistant. And so I was an assistant for, God, 6 seasons. And then he ended up leaving and resigning as head coach here at UConn. And here I am, put my name in the hat. They picked me, and here we are. The rest is history.
What was it like returning in 2018 to become the assistant coach and then in 2019 become the interim head coach?
So I was actually already here leading up to 2018. I was an assistant, like I said, with Chris, and then I ended up getting pregnant in 2018. And then 2018 happened, going into 2019, and that's when Chris ended up resigning. So the year of 2019, the off season going into the fall of 2019 was my interim head coaching gig. Yeah, it was a privilege, right? So it's, I was asked if I would be interested in the job, and I said, well, absolutely. I had as much buy-in as anybody else. I recruited, had been a part of the plan from the beginning with a lot of the student athletes that are here now. And they saw what I was envisioning for the program to be an asset, and they ended up hiring me full-time.
Of course, in 2020, what was it like to become the full-time head coach for the first time?
Yeah, kind of going right off of what I just said, it was pretty awesome. I mean, they hired me right in the middle of the season. So I finished up 2019 fall. We were in the American Conference then. And then getting into the off season, we were really, really putting our head down and going for the sprint, and really trying to implement what we wanted to as a staff. And then this thing called COVID hit, and we ended up being in a world pandemic. We had a whole new thing that no one has ever dealt with before, ever. So we couldn't even ask for advice. We were just kind of rolling with the punches and figuring out what was the best to do at that time for our student athletes and for us as individuals. So needless to say, my first 3 months of being a head coach got right into a world pandemic. So learning how to deal with adversity and figuring out how to get better, even when we couldn't be together in the gym, was something that we need to really be creative about. And I thought we did a pretty good job of doing it. And then fortunately enough, we were able to come back and compete with, contact tracing and all that fun stuff. And here we are, 2 years later, almost 2 years later, going into 2 years later, finally, hopefully, seeing a turn for the normal season. So.
Can you talk about, of course, the culture that you have built since obviously becoming head coach?
Yeah, I think something that we really strive for here is creating a championship-like experience. And all of that entails is really regards to, I can't promise trophies, I can't promise championship wins, but what I can promise is the experience. So we function like we're championship caliber. We have the expectations like we're championship caliber. So what that means is working really hard every single day. Sometimes we have to make sacrifices and compromises. Sometimes we have to look in the mirror, and it's really, really a tough road, but it's so rewarding at the end. But we also value relationships a ton. We really value the type of people that we want to surround ourselves with, that we want to surround our culture and our program with. We spend a lot of time together, so it's important to like each other, to love each other, to embrace tough moments. So I think that's the biggest thing, is the fact that we're not asking for perfection, we're asking for improvement, we're asking for progress. And as long as we're staying on the right track and focusing on the end goal, then we're all gonna live with no regret, and hopefully win a few ball games while we're at it.
Of course, what does a typical game day look like for UConn volleyball?
Yeah, it's not super complex. If the game days are on school days, we want our student athletes to go to school and go to class. And then we typically start our game day stuff, depending on time, roughly about 4 hours prior to the game. So we have our, game day itself is pretty easy, but preparation throughout the week is probably a little bit more complex. So we have our pregame meals, our positional film, and then we get our serve and pass, and then it's game time. So really not trying to load them up and make things really, really inconsistent. We like to preach consistency. So a lot of that preparation and game day like stuff is done prior to game day. Game day is just all about the match.
Who are some teams that you face in your conference?
So we're in the Big East Conference. So there's 11 teams this year. Because of our addition, we just recently added into the Big East Conference. So we play teams as far west as Creighton. And then we're obviously on the East Coast. So we play, our St. John, Seton Hall, Providence, and then we go all the way down to Georgetown, Villanova, and then sprinkle in there with DePaul and Xavier. So we're a good little mix. The region is nice. The student athlete experience with travel is not too shabby compared to the American Conference, which was absolutely asinine. We were traveling all over the place. But those are some of the teams we play in our conference.
Of course, what is it like getting to play Providence, Xavier, and teams like that?
I think the biggest thing with our conference is the parity is pretty crazy. I mean, from top to bottom, it's a challenging weekend every weekend. There's not one team that you can't overlook, but also too, they're very different styles of play. So you have your Marquette and Creightons, who are top 25 programs every single year, who play maybe a little bit more cleaner volleyball, a little bit more stereotypical high caliber volleyball, where at the bottom of the conference, you have the players that are just gritty, they're feisty, they're scrappy, they win points just because they keep the ball in play. It may be a little unconventional, but definitely frustrating for those that are not used to playing against it. So that's the crazy part about our conference, is that the parity is great, but also the style of play is very different. So the consistency is really inconsistent.
What obviously is the recruitment process look like for prospective student athletes looking to play college volleyball?
It's honestly pretty different for everyone. I'd say the commonality for recruiting process is that we were able to communicate with prospective student athletes in their junior year of high school, which has changed recently. Usually we were able to communicate with prospective student athletes if they called us. So they could have been 12 years old and gave us a call, and we could talk recruiting to them, as long as we just didn't initiate the contact, where now it's very different, which I'm a little bit more an advocate for, because I think it's important to have these conversations with more mature individuals to understand what they want in regards to their future, but also give an accurate read on what we're going to be buying into at the same time. So it's important to understand, because obviously if you recruit really, really young, as people change, right? You grow up, your interests change, your direction changes in life. So it does vary, but typically, college volleyball athletes play club. So they play on a club team in their local area. They travel to different tournaments, they get recruited. And then it's our job to identify the talent. So it's our job to kind of piecemeal to see who expresses interest, how we follow up, and then it goes on connection. So it goes both ways. So what the student athlete may want, the prospective student athlete may want, and then what we want as ourselves for our program.
Of course, what is it like obviously going out to obviously look at those tournaments that obviously the club volleyballs have?
What is it like to go to these tournaments? Well, I think to any normal person, like someone who's not experienced in recruiting, could probably look at those situations and think that it's very overwhelming. But as college coaches, we go to these large tournaments, we get the best bang for our buck in the regards to seeing multiple prospective student athletes every day. So that's the convenient part. So we can evaluate a lot in a short amount of time. But then sometimes we go to different high schools, we go to club practices. We obviously have official and unofficial visits that happen to kind of expose what we can have to offer. So that's kind of how it works.
What is it like to obviously have those prospective student athletes come on those official visits to obviously UConn volleyball?
Yeah, I think, like I said, it really is different for everyone. The way we offer our official visits is if we offer an official, we're really, really interested in the prospective student athlete. So we don't just have a ton of official visits to have a ton of official visits, where some institutions may do that. So we use that as part of our recruiting process, like in the steps before we maybe essentially offer someone. But it's a good time. It's the best time, I think, in some ways, when you do all the conversing and the relationship building prior to, and then you finally get to meet them in person and show them campus and show them what we have to offer from academic side to athletic side. They get to meet the team, which is obviously a huge proponent of their commitment to their future, because it's obviously important to make sure you like your teammates. But that's kind of how it works. And it's really a good time to really showcase what UConn has and what we have to offer for their future.
Of course, as head coach on the official visit, what is it like seeing those prospective student athletes look at those jerseys and obviously feel at home in that jersey?
I think it's, I'm a big feeler. So like, I definitely go on things that like of intuition and kind of the gut feeling. So I think I always ask those that when they commit to UConn, I'm always like, well, what was the reason? What was what made you make the commitment? And they're always like, it's just the people. And I think a lot of that has to do with the hard work that we do here in regards to our staff and our student athletes and our support staff and the people here at the institution. But they, I think they just get excited to see hey, I could be a part of something really great. And that's really the exciting piece, is just knowing the support is there, knowing that they're going to flourish, knowing that they're going to be successful, and noticing that they're going to be part of something, really special.
What advice would you give high school athletes looking to play college volleyball?
I would say, really take your time. But I think there's a lot of self-reflection as well, just to figure out what you like, because I think at that point in time, everything looks great. Playing college athletics is obviously a great opportunity, and not a lot of people have the opportunity to do that. But noticing that it's really about fit. Not every institution, I think there's an institution out there for everyone. But I also think like it's important not to be, masked by the name, but really focusing in on, like, if you would take the name off the jersey, would your feeling and your intention still be the same regardless of what the jersey says? I think it's important to understand, because I think if it's genuine, you're able to be authentic, you're able to be vulnerable. You'll really be able to connect with what the institution, and I say that as an umbrella term, so everything that's underneath the institution involving the people will make sense.
What advice would you give future college coaches looking to get started, and what advice would you give first-time head coaches?
College coaching, I think you have to have a passion for it. So if you don't love it, don't do it. And then for first time head coaches, because I was one of them, I'm still a first time head coach, technically, is be okay with change, be okay with the fact that you may not know everything, be okay with being wrong, and be a listener before a talker. That would be my biggest advice.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you at on social media along with the UConn volleyball program at?
Well, my assistant coaches convinced me to get a Twitter. So I have a Twitter account, and I also have an Instagram account, but you can follow the UConn volleyball team at UConn volleyball for Instagram. And then mine is, I think my Twitter handle is like UConn head coach. So
thank you again, Coach Ellen Herman-Kimball, for your interview, and best of luck in your future as the UConn head volleyball coach.
Thank you, Brandon.
You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Coach, for your interview, and best of luck in your future.
Thank you.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.